Feeling stuck? Yearning for more? You're in the right place. This is Midlife Moxie with Nicole, where you're going to get a weekly dose of courage, clarity, and maybe a little bit of chaos as we navigate our best chapter yet, midlife.
Welcome back to Midlife Moxie with Nicole. Last week, we talked about the masks that we wear and how to identify roles that are suffocating you and your life. Today, we're going to talk about something a little deeper that might sound simple and that's probably going to make you feel uncomfortable. That's giving you full permission to want what you want. We're talking about full-on permission fatigue, that bone-deep exhaustion from asking everyone else if your desires are allowed to exist. And if you're a high-achieving woman who's spent decades making everyone else comfortable while your own wants gather dust, this is probably going to hit a little different. Let me go straight to the jugular here and start with a truth that might sting. You know what you want. You've always known. The problem isn't clarity. It's that you've been performing your desires instead of really living them. Think about it. When someone asks you what you want, you don't go blank because you don't know. You go blank because your mind is rapidly calculating what's safe to want, what won't make anyone uncomfortable, what desire can I voice that won't get me labeled as selfish. And let me be honest with you, that calculating, that's not consideration. That's survival programming from an old nervous system that learned your worth was conditional on being low maintenance. For the woman who is listening to this, the one who runs the show but feels like she's disappearing in her own life, this isn't another pep talk about self-care. This is about recognizing your inability to access your desires isn't a character flaw. It's a conditioning pattern. And this conditioning can be interrupted. So let's talk about what you have lost touch with and what you want, what you desire. It wasn't because you were weak or selfish or broken. It's because somewhere along the way, probably in your teens, that your nervous system learned desires were dangerous. Maybe you wanted something and you were labeled as demanding. Maybe you expressed a preference and told you were being difficult. Maybe you said no to something and suddenly everyone was upset with you. Your brilliant nervous system did what it does best. It adapted. It learned to scan for what others wanted first. And it developed an exquisite sensitivity to everyone else's needs while going completely numb to your own. That numbness, that's not you being selfless. That's your nervous system protecting you from the threat of wanting something that might not be approved. But here's something that you probably have never heard. You're not living in survival mode anymore, especially if you've listened to some of the episodes of this podcast. Your worth does not depend on being the woman who never asks for anything. And that hypervigilance around other people's comfort, it's keeping you trapped in a life that looks good from the outside, but feels like a slow suffocation. So let's ask ourselves, what gets in the way of reconnecting with your authentic desires? Let's name the real obstacles, not the Instagram therapy versions. First up, and this is probably going to be uncomfortable, so buckle in. You're addicted to being needed. And I know that sounds harsh, but let's be honest. When someone needs you, your body here feels a hit of validation, thinking to itself, see, I matter, I'm valuable. But let's ask ourselves, what is the cost of that validation? Because if it's the complete abandonment of your own needs, is it really truly worth it? If you're listening, you're probably connecting with a feeling of getting your worth from being indispensable. And deep down, you're terrified that if you start prioritizing your desires, your wants, your needs, people won't need you anymore. And if they don't need you, who are you? Second, you mistake guilt for intuition. Every time you consider doing something for yourself, guilt shows up like it's your moral compass. But guilt isn't wisdom, it's conditioning. It's your own internal body trying to keep you safe by keeping you small. When you feel guilty for wanting something, that's not your inner voice telling you it's wrong. That's your conditioning telling you it's dangerous. And maybe you're performing spiritual bypassing. You might tell yourself you should be grateful for what you have. You should want less. You should be more evolved than having desires. But all of this spiritual bypassing is just another performance. This time it's for an imaginary audience of enlightened beings who are judging you for being human. Here's how you start reconnecting with what you actually want beneath all of that conditioning and all of the performances. First, stop asking yourself what you want and start asking yourself what your body wants. You see, your mind has been trained to calculate acceptable desires, but your body hasn't. Your body knows when it's tired, when it's overstimulated, when it needs space, when it craves connection. So start there. What does your body need right now? And not what you think you should need, but what your actual body is telling you. Next, notice when you edit yourself. Pay attention to that split second when you have a genuine response to something, an authentic preference, a real reaction. And then watch yourself modify it before it even reaches your mouth. That moment of editing, that's where your real desires live. In that unedited space before you make yourself palpable. And third, practice micro rebellions. Start with desires so small they feel almost silly. Because your body needs proof that honoring your wants is safe before it will let you access the bigger ones. Let me give you a few examples. Maybe you want to eat lunch outside instead of at your desk. Without checking if anyone needs you for those 30 minutes. And maybe you just want to even take a different route home because it feels good, not because it's more efficient. Or maybe you want to listen to angry music instead of the meditation or soft music playlist that everyone tells you you should prefer. Maybe you want to wear the red lipstick that feels too bold, or order dessert when you're out somewhere nice without asking if anyone wants to share. And we hit on this last week, but it is important just to reiterate. Saying things like, I don't want to, instead of making up an elaborate excuse about why you can't. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes when you do these micro rebellions. You're training your body that your preferences matter. You're creating new neural pathways in your brain that says, when I want something, I can have it without catastrophe. But here's an important part, and this is where most people mess this up. You have to do these micro rebellions without apologizing, without over-explaining, and without managing other people's reactions to your choices. Because the moment you start justifying your desires, you're right back in performance mode. You're teaching your body that your wants are only acceptable if you can convince others they're reasonable. These aren't small desires. They're practice rounds for your body to remember that wanting something and acting on it won't kill you. They're evidence that you can trust yourself to know what you need. I want to share something with you that illustrates how powerful it is when you stop asking permission and start honoring what your body actually needs. A while ago, I had a client who desperately wanted to get into working out regularly, but her body, it had other plans. A serious relationship had just ended, and she not only was questioning her worth, but she had gained weight, and the weight that she was carrying, plus all of the talk in her head, was just a lot of emotional baggage and chaos. And all of it was weighing on her. She kept telling herself she should want to exercise. But every morning she'd hit snooze instead of going to the gym or taking a run or walk. Classic performance of a desire instead of actually listening to what her system needed. Here is what was really happening. Her body was still in survival mode from the relationship trauma. And it wasn't safe to add more stress, even good stress like working out. But instead of honoring that, she was beating herself up, calling herself lazy, undisciplined. So we stopped trying to force the behavior and started asking what her body needed to feel safe enough to move in it. And after some questions and back and forth and some time together, we came to realize that she needed ritual and predictability. Those would signal safety in her own body. The solution wasn't willpower, but it was intelligence about listening to the body. So we created a simple evening ritual. She would get out her workout clothes and lay them out where she would see them first thing in the morning. And when she woke up, before her brain could even negotiate, she would change into her workout clothes and go work out. No excuses, no internal debates. And within a matter of weeks, her body had learned this new pattern of safety. But here's really where the real transformation happened. It was when she stopped performing motivation and started trusting her body's wisdom about what it needed to heal. And here's what you need to understand. Your desires aren't optional extras that you get to have once after everyone else's needs are met. They're not selfish interruptions to your real purpose of serving others. Your desires are sacred information from a body and a nervous system that knows what you need to thrive, not just survive. When you ignore your desires, you're not being selfless. You're abandoning yourself. And when you abandon yourself, you teach everyone around you that your needs don't matter. You want to model something powerful for the people in your life? Stop apologizing for taking up space with your wants. Stop performing gratitude for scraps when you're starving for a full meal. Start treating your desires like the sacred intelligence that they are. And yes, some people won't like it when you stop being the woman who wants nothing for herself. Some people have gotten very comfortable with your self-abandonment, and their discomfort is not your responsibility to manage. You've spent years, maybe even decades, being the woman who makes everyone else comfortable. What would happen if you became the woman who made yourself comfortable first? This week, I want you to practice something that might feel revolutionary. Stop asking permission to want what you want. And let's get specific on how to actually do this. Because knowing you should honor your desires and knowing how to honor them are two different things. Practice the nervous system check-in 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and before bed. Place your hand on your chest and ask, what does my body need right now? Not what you think it should need, not what would be productive or helpful for others. What does your actual nervous system need? Maybe it needs water. Maybe it needs to move. Maybe it needs quiet. Maybe it needs to cry. Maybe it needs to rage. Don't judge what comes up. Just notice it. And then practice the desire interrupt. When someone asks you what you want, even for something as simple as where to go for dinner, notice the split second before you start calculating what everyone else wants. In that split second, there's your authentic response. Practice saying that before you edit it into something more palatable. Next, learn the language of non-negotiable boundaries. Instead of, I'm sorry, but I can't, try, that doesn't work for me. Instead of, I wish I could, but try, I'm not available for that. And we hit on some of these last week, but they are worth repeating. Instead of making up elaborate excuses, simply say, I don't want to. And you can practice these phrases in the mirror, talking to yourself if you need to. Your nervous system needs to hear you claim up space without apology. When you feel guilty for honoring a desire, I want you to practice guilt archaeology. Ask yourself, whose voice is telling me this is wrong? When did I first learn that my wants were dangerous? Usually that guilt isn't your wisdom. It's someone else's discomfort that you internalized as your truth. And you can even create a desire practice. Once a day, do something small that's purely for your pleasure without it serving anyone else. Read a book that's not self-improvement or self-help or nonfiction. Take a bath in the middle of the day. Buy yourself flowers. Dance in your kitchen. These aren't rewards for being good. They're medicine for a nervous system that forgot pleasure is your birthright. When you feel genuine desire arise, even if it's small, even if it seems inconvenient, instead of immediately calculating whether it's acceptable, ask yourself, what would it feel like to honor this without apology? And notice what happens in your body when you even consider treating your desires as valid without external approval. And if that voice shows up telling you you're being selfish or demanding, thank it for trying to keep you safe. And then say, I don't need to earn the right to want what I want. My desires are sacred information, and I'm finally ready to listen. Remember, you don't need permission to want what you want. You never did. That was just conditioning dressed up as consideration. That's our time today for the podcast on Midlife Moxie with Nicole Haight. And if this episode made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort means your conditioning is being challenged, and your conditioning needs to be challenged. If you're ready to stop performing your way through life and start living from your authentic desires, you know where to find me. Because the woman who's been buried under all that people pleasing and performance, she's still in there, and she has a few things to say. So until next time, may you have the courage to want what you want, not because someone gave you permission, but because you finally remembered you never needed it. Before you go, I want to make sure that you know how to stay connected to this work, because what we have talked about today, this is just the beginning. If you're sitting there thinking, holy shit, she just described my entire life, and you want to know exactly what patterns are running the show in your life, I've created something specifically for you. You can head on over to my website, www.nicolehaight.com, and take the assessment, which sacred pattern is running your midlife. It's a free diagnostic tool that will tell you exactly where you are in your own conditioning and what your next steps should be. There's no fluff, no generic advice, just precise information about your specific patterns. Because here's the thing, you can't interrupt what you can't see. And most women are trying to change their lives without understanding the deeper nervous system conditioning that is actually driving their choices. If you want to dive deeper into these conversations and connect with other women who are also done performing their way through life, you can join my private Facebook group. Link will be in the show notes. And it's where we have conversations, real, raw, unfiltered truth about women in midlife. And if you want to be on my VIP list for weekly doses of truth that maybe help keep you accountable to your own transformation, there is a link in the show notes, but there's also a link at my website, www.nicolehaight.com, where you can sign up to be on my email list. This isn't a typical newsletter filled with tips and inspiration, though I do include that from time to time. This is a newsletter where I share hard truths, insights, raw, unfiltered things that are just not socially acceptable on social media. And these awarenesses that you can take away from what I share can be a catalyst for change. So I invite you to sign up. And if you're ready to go even deeper, because you might be tired of all of this surface level work and you really want a whole system level transformation, everything you need to know about working with me is on my website, www.nicolehaight.com. I'm not a coach, and this isn't coaching, and it's not therapy, and it's sure as hell not spiritual bypassing. This is a resurrection of the nervous system, and this is for the woman who is ready to stop performing and start living. You can also follow me on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at I am Nicole Haight, where I share reminders about conditioning and women and midlife, confronting truths and desires that are just frankly not up for negotiation. So next week we will continue to have discussions that likely will make some of you squirm. It is what I'm best at. But if this episode shifted something for you, do me a favor and leave a review. Not because I need an ego boost, but because there are women out there who are Googling, why do I feel invisible in my own life at 2 a.m.? And your review might be what helps them find this podcast. Your review could also be the breadcrumb that leads another woman out of performance prison and into her own resurrection. So until next week, remember, you don't need permission to want what you want. You never did. That was just conditioning dressed up as consideration. You're a woman in midlife. You don't need permission. You just need to have desires and wants and the ability to go after all of them. So stop asking and start claiming.